The release of Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon brought about a number of brand new threats to the VGC metagame. At long last, Pokemon like Mega Gengar, Tyranitar, and Landorus were legal once again. But the Pokemon that struck the most dread into the hearts of VGC players was none of those. It was actually Chansey. In the lead up to the first regional of 2018 in Dallas, Texas, there were rumors that Chansey was going to be a legitimate meta threat. And in round 6, those threats were validated, as recent regional champion Jeremy Rodrigues stepped onto the stream stage with his trusty pink friend. In that same round, Chuppa Cross would show every player in the venue exactly how to beat the Chansey strategy, and send Jeremy from an undefeated 5-0 record to a 5-4 finish. This was the last time that Chansey has ever been good in VGC. Now, Chansey did have some usage in VGC 2017, but not as a pure stall Pokemon. Nick Navarre got top 8 at the North American International Championships with Chansey on a much more standard-looking team, using it as a support Pokemon that had the potential to win endgames against special attackers. The transition to Ultra Sun and Moon had two major changes that enhanced Chansey's viability as a stall threat. The first was Shuckle's addition to the game. Shuckle has a massive defense stat, and by using Guard Split, it can boost Chansey's defense to above average levels. Combine that with Chansey's massive HP stat, Defense Curl, and Minimize, and this could make Chansey nearly unkillable. However, the second, more important change from VGC 2016 to 2017 to 2018 was actually the change in timer. In Generation 6, VGC had an overall match timer of 15 minutes. Players could take as long as they wanted on each turn, and after 15 minutes, the match would end and an in-game tiebreaker would occur. This led to a lot of matches where players would take 45 seconds to click Protect, another 45 seconds to click a move, and then a further 45 seconds to click Protect again, all to stall out the last 3 minutes of the game and win on tiebreakers. Needless to say, this was not very fun to watch and needed to change. In Generation 7, the games removed this overall timer in favor of something more akin to a chess clock. Each player had an allocated amount of time to make their moves, and if that hit 0, they lost, with no exceptions. VGC 2017 also had some very stally endgames, so when two Leech Seed Celesteela would sit in front of each other, the timer legitimately could come into play. Except that the timer was 10 minutes long, which meant a whole lot of sitting and waiting for animations to play, and then mashing your buttons as soon as possible, and repeating that process for up to an hour. Thankfully, there was also an end-of-round tiebreaker process that was handled manually by the judges, so you wouldn't have to sit through 3 games of this. But in VGC 2018, they changed this Your Time chess clock to 5 minutes per player, which meant that running out of your time was a real concern for any match that lasted for more than 7 or 8 turns. From 2019 onwards, your time has been set at 7 minutes, which is largely considered the perfect middle ground with no complaints. However, in 2018, that 5-minute timer did enable some degenerate strategies like Chansey. The Chansey team that Jeremy used had a very linear game plan. On turn 1, you could use Smeargle and Reuniclus to consistently set up Trick Room. On turn 2, Smeargle would explode, giving Shuckle a free switch into that slot. And on turn 3, Reuniclus would switch to Chansey, which would give Shuckle the ability to click Guard Split into its partner. From there, Chansey could click moves like Defense Curl and Minimize, which would make it functionally unkillable. Reuniclus also had the chance to skill swap the Chansey, giving it Magic Guard to avoid Toxic or Sandstorm damage. Finally, once it was all set up, Chansey could click Seismic Toss to KO all of the opponent's Pokemon. If Chansey ever got close to being knocked out, it could Soft Boil to heal off that damage. Now, you might notice some holes in this strategy, but the rest of the team and moves were built to facilitate this game plan. It had ways to stop opposing taunt and Trick Room and Follow Me to guarantee the Chansey would get fully set up. However, this also didn't always win the game. In this matchup, Chuppa has a Zapdos with Roost, and this was commonplace in the format, and this would functionally lead to a stalemate. This is where the 5-minute timer comes into play. Because Chuppa had multiple Pokemon on the field, and Jeremy only has his Chansey, Chuppa will always spend an additional second or two making his move choices. Over the course of what might be a 50-turn game, this adds up, and it is basically impossible for Jeremy to run out of time before Chuppa does. In Game 1, we see Chuppa aware of this, and he actually uses his Zapdos to knock out his own Tyranitar to minimize his own time consumption. However, at this point, the game is already lost. Chansey cannot be knocked out, and Chuppa is behind on your time. Despite this, Chuppa spends the next 12.5 minutes clicking his buttons as quickly as possible, and only loses by a solid 31 seconds. This, however, was all part of the plan. Now, it's also worth talking about the context of this battle. Not only was it the first regional of the year, which meant that all eyes were on this battle around the world to see this new format in action, but also, this was the last battle remaining in the round. The players on stream generally start about 10 minutes after the rest of the round starts due to the logistics of getting everything set up, and the overall round timer was 50 minutes long. The first game of that set had taken a full 30 minutes, which meant everyone else was wrapping up their round and making their way over to the stream setup, including myself. Basically, the entire venue was standing around the projector, ready to watch the start of Game 2. Meaning every single player watched the blueprint on how to beat Chansey. The start of Game 2 plays out exactly like Game 1, with Chansey getting its guard split boosts in Trick Room, getting Magic Guard from the Reuniclus, and Jeremy losing his other 3 Pokemon on the first 4 turns. However, it's also worth noting that at the start of Game 2, there are 20 minutes left on the round timer for this match, at which point judges would declare that there are 3 turns remaining. After those 3 turns, they will manually execute tiebreakers to decide who wins this game. And the first tiebreaker is the number of Pokemon remaining. This means that Chansey is now on the clock. Despite the fact that Chuppa has no way to knock out this Chansey, he is in the driver's seat. Chansey has 20 minutes to take 3 knockouts, and it is not doing a lot of damage. Chuppa's Zapdos can heal off any damage done into that slot with Roost, which means Jeremy has to knock out the other 3 Pokemon, and Chuppa's other Pokemon have Protect to avoid taking damage as well. On top of all of that, Tapu Fini has a Mega Berry, which in Generation 7 heals off 50% of its health. While Chansey does manage to take a knockout on the Tapu Fini and the Tyranitar eventually, it's just not enough. The third turn of tiebreakers is completed a full 52 minutes into the round, and Chuppa is declared the winner of Game 2, having 2 Pokemon remaining, while Jeremy only has his Chansey. This, however, is not the end of the match. Now Jeremy has won 1 game, and Chuppa has won 1 game, and there are no ties in VGC. Instead, they move on to a Game 3 with a different set of tiebreaker rules. This time, the first player to end a turn with a Pokemon advantage immediately wins the game, and therefore the match. This is not something that Jeremy's team is built to do effectively, and needless to say, on turn 2 of Sudden Death, Chuppa manages to take a knockout with his Pokemon entirely unthreatened. Over an hour after the start of the round, and to the cheers of everyone at the venue, Chuppa had beaten Chansey. Chuppa would go on to the finals of this regionals, losing to Cedric Bernier. Jeremy, however, would lose his next 3 rounds, finishing 5-4. Every single player in the venue saw how to beat Chansey, and this style of team never saw high-level play again. Furthermore, in Generation 8, Matches like this led to the implementation of both the Your Time chess clock system and an in-game timer as well to help avoid teams like this becoming commonplace. As a result, this random match on stream in round 6 of Dallas Regionals might have been one of the most influential games in VGC history. If you enjoyed this video, I'd love it if you subscribed and left a like, and I've also got a playlist of videos like this one where I talk about moments in VGC history. Thank you to all my channel members, and until next time, I will see you all later.